It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Good moment. This is Barnett Bain. I'm here with my good friend and co-host. What's your name?
Freeman Michaels.
That's right. Ever in the now, you know.
Ever in the now.
Don't take anything for granted. I don't want to
Maybe somebody
I don't want
else
to
tomorrow.
assume anything. Good moment, Freeman.
Good
How
moment
goes
to
it?
you. It's going well.
It does. I noticed you had some musings this morning that you were sharing.
Well, this is probably old news by now, but I did write something this morning. You know, I'm a little self-conscious, but I'm going to read it. I'm not that self-conscious.
You're not that self-conscious. You
No.
were, after all, Drake Belson.
Stop. You got to get over that, Barnett.
Drake Belson, for the two or three of you that don't know, what was that show?
Young and the Restless.
The Young and the Restless. Well, he's still restless.
So I wrote this morning for what it's worth. All war starts in the mind. Peace is a byproduct of consciousness. We all have thoughts that are ungrounded and unfounded. Most people haven't developed the consciousness to unhook from these thoughts and allow them to float through our awareness without feeding the thought with attention. The subsequent feelings that get triggered with fear-based thoughts convince us that some imagined threat is real. Thoughts related to fear and or anxiety are the thoughts that generate the most distorted threads of possibility in our imagination. We empower unhealthy thoughts by literally conceiving fear-based possibilities in our mind, then distorting our perception and finding evidence to support our fear-based thinking. Going to war will never generate peace, and we are dangerous to ourselves and others if we think it will. Anxiety perpetually puts us on the brink of war. People in a state of upset always find a place to project their upset. They manifest enemies and conflict wherever they go, convincing themselves and trying to convince others that their fears are real and substantial. The enemy is always within. What we call the enemy on the outside is just a projection of our fear-based thinking. Individuals and collectives that are not aware of their fear-based patterns of thinking will incessantly detect new threats to their security. Peace is personal. It's the consciousness and developed discipline whereby we unhook from stressful thoughts. If we begin to operate out of and project an inner well-being and sense of personal security, we can become instruments of peace. Not only will we no longer create enemies, we will become a source of stability for those who still default to fear-based thinking. Just a little thing I thought of this morning. I actually popped out of bed with that.
Yeah, you need an editor.
I do. That
With
was
all
long.
due
I
respect.
know, I got it.
So wonderful and wise words, a lot of words for radio
I'm a wordy guy.
early in the morning.
I'm a wordy guy.
But to be with all due respect, a tremendous amount of wisdom. I am a little more interested these days in calibrating to the frequencies of these things. You know, it feels to me like there was an enormous charge on these issues. You're writing, of course, in response to what is happening in Syria.
Yeah.
There's a lot of charge. A lot of people are very.
Well, there's just so let me tell you where it comes from. I'm sorry, I just cut you off, but it's my own triggering. It's my own sense. We talked last week about this. So the whole way that these little wars are going on in my life, right?
Yeah, and what I'm interested in is owning the triggers themselves. Yeah. The triggers are charges. They are energetic, and somehow it seems to me there's a relationship. We're like capacitors and spark plugs. We build these charges and we build these charges, and then we instantly dissipate them, often in unhealthy ways and unproductive ways, as individuals or as cultures or as nations. We'll discharge, whether it's an internal war, small war, and we act out. But it's the charge itself it's these unresolved stories, all of which have energies and things that get denied. What we deny suddenly comes at us in the world. So I am interested in exploring the frequencies underlying so much of the rhetoric.
I love it.
And I think that we could not have dreamed Well, we did dream it, so I guess
it's
it's
a waking dream.
So how's that for habituated pattern recognition?
There you go.
We did dream. We did dream up the perfect guest today to explore and wander and discover what we can learn today about these resonances and frequencies, resonance magic. So it's my very great pleasure to welcome Panache Desai today, who's a spiritual teacher and well known from his appearances in the media, Oprah, and elsewhere, and his many videos that abound on the internet. And he is well known to us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness because it seems that so many of our guests refer to you, Panache, in such glowing and loving terms. It has been way too long that we have been waiting for our crack at establishing relationships. So welcome, Panache, to Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Thank you so much. That has to be the best intro to a radio show I think I've ever experienced.
That's beautiful.
Anywhere.
That's
fantastic.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for having me on. I can't wait to dive into this.
So war is all over the collective consciousness right now. It's the war drums are beating, and I see it personally as a mirror. That's how I'm viewing it. At least that's how I was expressing it in what I wrote. That I really need to own what in me is being reflected out there that I can own. Because in that sense, at least from my perspective, I have power. Not power in the sense of wanting to dominate or control, but an empowered response. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, your explanation when we first started and what you read was actually absolutely pitch perfect when it comes to energy. So the first thing is that we are vibrational beings and that we inhabit the vibrational universe. That's the first thing. Ancient yogis and mystics knew this, and now quantum physicists and scientists who are on the fringes of science are beginning to prove this to be true. And so what does that mean then? That means that the universe is echoing back to us in any moment what resides inside of us. Now, what happens to us as human beings? Well, we receive this training, right? So energy wants to move and flow naturally by its state. Now, emotions are just energies in motion, anger, sadness, and fear. But what we do on planet Earth is we do this thing called judgment and analysis and criticism, and that leads to the repression or suppression of these energies. And then what happens is if we're not authentically available for them, they will eke out. And they will eke out in ways that are addictive patterns, ways in which we distract ourselves, ways in which we avoid feeling, we deny, we numb. And then, subsequently, we get to a point of unworkability to where we can no longer contain all of this inside of us, and then we find the nearest human being that we can and assign them responsible for what we're feeling, and then we unload on them.
That's it.
Now, amplify that by an entire country, and then amplify that by an entire planet, and then we wonder why we're at odds with each other. Because we haven't taken the time to systematically dismantle the weapons of mass destruction that we have inside of us. It's like every single day we are engaging in this conflict, this internal conflict. And here's the conflict. You're angry. Instead of just being angry, you'll judge yourself for being angry. Then not being angry will feed into that cycle of shame and guilt that will continue to feed that charge of anger. Same thing with sadness. Like, we won't feel our sadness. So emotions are energies in motion. Everything wants to move. And the reason why we are where we are today is because we've judged ourselves, because we've placed parameters around human expression and what it is to live and be spiritual and explore our humanity. Ultimately, all of that is getting in the way of who we really are shining forth, which is our spirit, our soul, our infinite potential. And so when you look at it, it's pretty fascinating what's happening right now, guys, because the soul is the most subtle level of energy. Then you've got the emotional layer around that. That's where your repressed or suppressed anger or sadness or fear. That's where the charge arises from. Then you've got the unconscious mind. Then you've got the conscious mind. Then you've got the physical body. What's happening right now is, because that emotional layer has not been addressed inside of us, it's literally being pushed up and out of us individually and globally. And we're being forced to deal with that which we have not dealt with inside of us. And that's the good news. The blessing in this, or the opportunity in this is to undergo that consciously. War is an unconscious response. It's unconscious. It's a fear-based response. And this war, this external war and this internal war, are both unconscious responses to what's happening, to what's naturally occurring. And so that's why what you wrote was so perfect. And that's how I feel about it. I just feel like if we could take the time to embrace who we are on the level of our identity, then naturally, the more we deal with that vibrationally dense layer, and vibrationally dense means that, energy is like water, like anger, it just wants to flow. It's like water. If we repress or suppress it, it turns into ice and it becomes heavy, right? That's all that happens. And it can also then, at the same point, be transmuted into steam, and it's gone. And in that same way, right now, we're in the midst of this vibrational overhaul that's occurring on the level of this emotional layer of who we are as human beings. And that is the layer that keeps us separate, that keeps us perceiving others to be a threat, right? And then we've got this thing called the reptilian brain, too, which is that animalistic part of us that functions that way. So the more we deal with this emotional layer, the more we deal with this vibrational density, the more we begin to move into a more evolved way of living in the world. And then eventually we begin to see ourselves in each other. And that's the end of conflict.
Big time.
I think it's important to note that it is an inside job, and it begins it begins in each of ourselves. It begins in myself. It is not about waiting for the next person to experience some degree of self-awareness. There are many levels of consciousness evolving simultaneously in our world. Many levels, all evolving, and the awareness of that and the development of my own compassion and understanding, my own ability to have an active caring born out of my own suffering, my own experience of being separate, allows me to have a different relationship, and that relationship can begin to shift things. But it is, everything that you're saying begins, of course, in the individual. And from there, we begin to see systemic changes, because we are, as you say, separate and yet connected.
And I want to add something, too, because, so much of this, and Barnett, we've talked about this, for me, it's a lot about the word control. The whole idea of self-control and trying to control, it's an adversarial relationship. I think it's something you said, Barnett. You said control is a recipe for suffering. The minute we're in control, we're in a battle with something.
Well, as Panache just said so beautifully, we control in order to resist the experience of energy moving through us that we have been socialized, that we have been trained to deny, and that is simply developmentally appropriate. We chose an experience of separation for reasons, and to put it back together again, Humpty Dumpty style. And listen, all the king's horses and all the king's men are not going to do this.
That's right.
Humpty
had to do it himself.
has to do it. We have to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And this journey of return, of owning the fragments, and of living in the body, and of experiencing a relationship to the energy moving through, embodied resonance, an aliveness, a sensation, feelings, that is not simply cognitive relationship to all that is.
Yeah, it's not just a head trip.
It's not just a head trip. Then we begin to have the relationship with feeling and energy motion. We're not as quick to deny it internally and then push it out and have it come at us as the so-called way of the world. So, Panache, you put out an energy of joy. You put out a frequency of fun. You are very unique in your very, very charismatic spirituality. It's attractive to many, including myself.
Absolutely.
It is a very empowered and very gracious model of what it looks like to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And I know that that you are doing it with a lot of awareness and a lot of love. And I want to hear from you how you see that.
Well, we can. So for me, Barnett, that this whole thing was born of a personal experience because, growing up in an Indian household and being spiritual, along the way you get to meet everybody. And regardless of who I went to see, I could never bow to anybody because I always realized that it wasn't about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mean that disrespectfully. Like, my parents would look at me like everyone else is bowing and I wouldn't bow because I realized that everybody's sacred. And so I was always born with this awareness, this greater oneness that is present in all of life. And also then there's our humanity, and there's the part of us that's insecure, and then there's the part of us that's arrogant to compensate for the insecurity. And then there's the self-hatred and self-loathing. And then there's, all the wonderful ways in which we undermine ourselves on a daily basis, and everything that basically comprises this thing called an identity.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it at a certain point, through personal experience, through experiencing the divine, I just experienced this infinite ocean of energy with no beginning and no end, and it's loved me, and it was like, wow, and it was just incredible, and this energy didn't judge me, didn't evaluate me. I couldn't have been anything else other than I was, and I was absolutely just cherished and adored for who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And that experience to me confirmed everything that I'd always known because I was very skeptical. And in spirituality, you hear a lot of different concepts and ideas. There's everybody has an opinion about something, and everybody has a position about something. And for me, it wasn't about any of that, and I always knew that. And so I always said, listen, if I'm here to do something, then I need to have a personal experience of it. So that's how everything happened. Now, that personal experience then allowed me to connect with this energy, my soul, my source, that infinite potential that I am. And I began to realize that was flowing through me all along. Like I remember even as a child, I'd sit next to people and touch them, and they'd start crying, and they'd start telling me how much they hated their lives and hated their wives, and I'm like, I'm 7, this is a little bizarre, could you think you could tell someone else, right? But then the amazing thing is that this would happen to them, and then they'd get up, and then as a child, the only way I could describe it was they'd get up sparkly, right? They'd sit down and they were kind of all heavy and kind of encumbered and burdened, but then when they got up, they were sparkly. And so this sparkly thing was happening through my life, and I just thought I was weird.
But wait, I want to just jump in on that point.
Yeah.
So there is this gift of being able to be a transmitter or transmission of these frequencies and these energies. And we've talked on this show about there comes a point in our love affair with the straight line that we are getting beyond our stories into a larger sense of stories, and ultimately a relationship with sort of a post-story world in which it is the energy itself. It's by the energy that will be known. These transmissions that you are well known for, they are a signature of your own experience here as in the body, and they are also a comfort and uplifting and empowering to others. So this is something piercing through from. If it's even a greater dimension that we are opening to.
So I want to come back to this because we do have to take a break. Because we do have to pay some bills.
So we're going to ask you to come back, folks. We're going to rejoin with Panache after this. And Panache, I'd like you to, when we come back, to share with us some of that experience.
Stay with us. We'll be right back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain and our guest, Panache Desai. Before the break, Panache, Barnett was talking about a certain ability to tap into or connect with frequency. source, maybe is the language, I don't know, but to source. So it doesn't, what I understand is it's not about eliminating all of the conflicts and confusion, but there's something that is more real that you seem connected to. Could you help me clarify what I'm asking you?
So it's like a house with 3 floors. That's the best way to describe it. On the top floor, there's just complete soul, complete connectivity. There's a middle floor that's part personality and part soul. There's a blending that happens here. So that's where the human and the divine meet. And then there's a bottom floor that's all personality. And so for me, I'm able to go into this space that's like the middle and top floor. And what happens is, in that space, the full power and emanation of my soul is reflected in me. And then that serves as a reminder to everyone around me that that's who they are. So the transmission paradigm actually is an absolute illusion, because you're not actually giving something to somebody else. What you're doing is acting more like a tuning fork to where you're vibrating at a resonance of love, and you're reminding them that that's who they are. And the very second they start to come into that remembrance, it's like everything else that isn't in harmony with that, or that they've created to not be good enough and not be lovable, begins to fall away. And then they begin an accelerated period of, their own cathartic unraveling of their identity and everything that they believe themselves to be, so that then they can come back home to the love that they are. And so that's what happens through me in webcasts and, and even an interview right now, it's already happening. Everywhere that I am, this is just being reflected through me. It's not me.
Yeah.
It's just relaxing. And the greatest way to do that for everyone that's listening is just to remain in the awareness of your breath. Just to simply come back to the simple awareness of your breath. There's something profound that happens. Your identity subsides, and you begin to access something deeper, something that you can't really even articulate in words, but that you can feel, see, and experience. So we all have this capacity, and it's been my honor to just remind people that, yeah, we're human, but being human isn't the problem. Being human is the blessing. And the more we're human, and the more we're willing to be human, the more our humanity becomes a bridge to our divinity and our infinite potential.
So it's almost as if this is, again, my interpretation, that you're giving people permission to put down their personality, their personal reality, in favor of something that's more real.
That's right. I interviewed Ram Dass, actually, and this is a question that I asked him. I said, Ram Dass, when did the illusion fall away? And he said, when I was touched by the truth. And he was, in his case, he was referring to his teacher and the grace that his teacher embodied. When he came into the presence of his teacher, his illusory sense of self fell away. And that's what happens. It's like when we are profoundly touched by the truth, the illusion loses its appeal, the identity loses its appeal. Not that it's wrong, it's not bad, it's not, the root cause of why everyone is having such a hard time in life. No, it's great. It allows you to express yourself uniquely. But what happens is when you connect to this deepest part of you, you become transparent, authentic. It's like your personality aligns with your soul. And then magic happens. It's incredible. Like just magic. Like out-of-the-box possibilities begin to come into being in a way that you never even could have imagined them.
And certainly all of the priorities shift. They fall away and they shift. And there is a sense, even as I experience you right now on the line with us, there is a thickening, and there is it allows me to also tune in to a complementary experience that has less mind chatter and more space. And it is delicious. It's absolutely delicious.
That's
very delicious.
Power. That's the power of presence.
It is so delicious. I have personal experience with it. It's quite focused right now, but I have my own experience with it when I am absolutely in the flow, when I am absolutely lost in some experience at which I have a certain kind of level of mastery if I'm working in one area or another, and when loses track of of time and of space, but is, I find myself hyper-focused. Teaching, sometimes I have that experience as well. And you just feel this kind of magical state. And it is palpable. It's what is beautiful about it is that we feel this experience of the oneness. We've talked before on this show of Indra's net. And I'm sure you know of Indra's net, this wonderful, for our listeners, this wonderful metaphor for holographic reality that is, I think, 5,000 years old. The Indra and the Hindu pantheon had a fisherman's net, and in the weave of every cross weave in this net, that which is infinite, was stitched a pearl, and each pearl reflected every other, was separate and individual, and yet reflected every other pearl in the net. The most marvelous metaphor for being separate and yet connected.
I love that.
And then to experience this kind of transmission here and elsewhere is an experiential connection with truth, from which there is no return. So you need to say something now, Panache, because this is radio, and we cannot have too many spaces between the pearls.
Well, I'd like to just invite everybody into that space, because everyone that's here is here absolutely on purpose.
Yeah.
And that, in fact, I would even go as far as to say that this is a remembrance that you've created for yourself as to who you really are. And that life's events have brought you here. And life's events may be a health situation. Life's events may be some kind of financial situation. Life's events may be
war.
College and wondering which way you want to go, or it could be we're on the verge of a war, and how do we navigate that?
Yeah.
Life is going to keep happening.
Yes. And there may be love. It may be love and growth as well.
Yeah,
it may be
absolutely.
joy. It may be the awe and wonder of
Totally.
of having ourselves up to a greater appreciation of a bunch of lights going on.
That's right. And so no matter what's brought you here, just know that there's something deeper that's flowering inside of you right now. This greater remembrance of who you are at the deepest level. That you are infinite. And that there's this part of you that's already abundant, and it's already healthy, and it's already everything that you're looking for and striving for outside of you. And I'm going to invite you to do something radical, which is go against what you've been told. And instead of striving to come into this place, just allow it to naturally flower inside of you. Just allow it to blossom. Just take some breath. Just relax your body. And just allow this greater connectivity to this amazing being that you are, this infinite light luminosity that I see when I look at you, to be fully realized and actualized within you. Good. Keep receiving, keep breathing, keep expanding, and just allow anything that wants to arise right now to just arise. It could be emotion, it could be joy, it could be fear, it could be anger, it could be insecurity, it could be mental chatter. It doesn't matter. It's all welcome here. It's all the part of you, and every part of you is loved and adored. Every single aspect of you. And no part of you is a mistake. Just keep breathing, just keep receiving, and just keep expanding. And I'm just going to lovingly ask that the oneness that you are, this greater connectivity that you are, fully be embodied inside of you. And that it fully be remembered. Because that's why you're here. You're here because you're up to great things. Because you're here to make war and suffering and pain a thing of the past. That one day they'll talk about on museum tours. Life, in 2013 when they review it again in 2300. Wow, did we really go to war with each other? Yes. Were we really afraid of each other? Yes. Did we really believe there wasn't enough? Yes, we did. But thank God that's all over. But by remembering this connectivity and by embracing all that you are, and I mean it, no part of you is a mistake. I promise you that. No part of you. Every single aspect of you is absolutely brilliant. And it just needs to be embraced. It just needs to be embraced.
Thank you. That's beautiful. It's a generous gift. The remembering, putting back together the truth about who we really are. It's a process, and I think there are space holders, people who, and I think you represent one of these people who doesn't have as much of a resistance. The source is more available, more often, more easily. And I personally feel that growing in myself. I mean, that's the commitment I've made in my life at some point. Can't tell you exactly what it looked like. I don't know if I have an epiphany moment necessarily. This show has been part of that, committing to playing at the edge of my own edge, in my own consciousness, to expand, to allow for greater and greater possibilities, more and more acceptance, to use the language you're offering, so I can align with my soul and as I was saying earlier, sort of put down the personality or the personal reality, because there is something on the other side of it that's just more. We sort of said at the show, it's more giving up what's real to us now for something that's sort of more real, and then more real. That's how I'm experiencing,
So I would like to take this opportunity to shift gears a little bit. Panache, tell our listeners, if you would, what is going on with you? What are you excited about? What are some of the opportunities that you are exploring and creating in the world today?
Well, there's just been an absolute explosion of everything since my Oprah interview, and there are so many things that are just opening up in a way that are just incredible. And personally, I'm going through my own evolution, and that evolution is bringing about great ways to support people in how to navigate their daily lives and how to live soulfully, and how to bring this principle of soulfulness into their relationships and into their finances and into their health and into every area of life and living. Because that's entirely possible, to live soulfully in every moment. And so we've been creating all kinds of wonderful things here. And, I have recognized the need for conscious commitment because, we didn't learn all of this conditioning overnight. It's continually been entrained into it. And so there is a certain need, until it's not a need anymore, to be consciously reminded. Until we remember. And then, at that point, we don't need the reminder anymore because it authentically becomes who we are. And so I've just been looking at how do we do that in the best possible way. We do it through webcasting. We do it through a 21-day program that I've created. We do it through a Living Fearlessly course that we're offering on the energy of fear, that in fact fear is a great energy. It's just that we don't recognize it for the blessing that it is. And then approaching this notion of living fearlessly. And so this greater message of love and acceptance is just flowering, and people are just ready. And so it's taking so many different expressions on it. And the best way to answer that is just to have people go to the website and look there, because there are so many different ways for people to connect with this remembrance. And again, come and remember. And then once you've remembered, go and live your life and be the reminder for others. That's the point.
Yeah, it's almost war isn't working. Peace is a better option. And that's
and
what
the internal war is certainly not working either. So
that's what
we end
about.
that one first, and the extrinsic situation will take care of itself in its own cadence, but it starts inside. Panache, where can we send our listeners? Of course, your information will be available to anyone on the Cutting Edge Consciousness website, along with a subsequent podcast that'll be up after the broadcast window. But where also can they go directly to get information about your whereabouts?
It's actually my name, so it's PANACHEDESAI.com.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And if you're on social media, the only place where I need your approval in my life still is on Facebook, so like me.
We need approval too. Let's see how that works.
We like you.
We like you. We approve.
We hope you'll like us too.
And we're so grateful, so incredibly grateful that you took the time today to spend some time with us.
While we have you, next time you're in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, of course.
We have a little lead time, we would love to invite you in studio.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And do this again. And we're hoping that you'll accept that invitation, and we certainly look forward to it.
That would be my absolute honor. And love to you both, and love to everyone listening. Thank you.
Beautiful. And for all of you listening, we invite you to stay tuned because we'll be right back after these messages to wrap this up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And we're back on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain.
Yes.
We are back.
That was delicious.
He's great.
That was really great, and I am very grateful for that experience.
The war within is over. I'm declaring.
You are. I appreciate the declaration. I am in awe of that transmission experience.
Love it.
I don't know whether you know what I'm referring to.
Big time.
You know, it's a very, very wonderful, and I'm not sure. I have a feeling that that for you listeners, that was a palpable experience for you too. That these kinds of energy fields are non-local.
Yeah,
that's mysterious. And I also hope that for those of you that were driving, you're all still safe on the road. I'm sure you are.
It's it's interesting because it's a way of reorganizing. It's an energetic way of reorganizing, where we kind of go back to the control game, where that control is just not required. There's a sense that we don't need it. We don't need to be grasping for control, which is kind of a default thing that at least I do. I'm aware that my desire to know and to figure out and to even verbalize, because we started with me reading that piece that I had written, to organize the information. Well, I'm not diminishing what I wrote. I mean, I love what I wrote. That's me working out my own stuff and what I'm learning and what I'm coming into. But I love when someone can embody it in the way that Panache does. It's really fantastic because it's a different way of receiving the information.
There's a very big difference experientially, and maybe it wasn't always as big as it is. Maybe it didn't always appear so clear cut to me as it does now. Maybe there was a time when it wasn't clear cut at all, and that seems pretty likely. But there is a very big distinction between the experience of those fields. The soupiness, the experience, the altered state that happens, versus me being strategic and thinking things through. One is a very embodied, and it's not just embodied. The altered state is not simply confined to my my physical body, but the whole room goes. So it's non-local. Right before the 2008 election, the end of 2007, when all of the kind of financial meltdown occurred, and at that time, I think we've discussed this on air before. At that time, our very comfortable, our comfortable and confident sense of security that was based on having a certain kind of financial resource and all of that melted down and disappeared almost in a matter of weeks. And Sandy and I, we were both so triggered, and we had so much fear because we had this blanket pulled out from underneath us. We were so disoriented and in such a panic. And I discovered, living almost across the street from me, our dear friend Anamika, who's a friend of the show.
Yeah.
Who is likewise blessed with this same kind of gift of being able to tune in to an aspect of herself that allowed for this transmission experience to occur, which in turn allows others to also tune in to what exists in themselves. It's not outside of us.
Yeah, she's amazing.
But were it not for that experience of those transmissions, which allowed me to have a different perspective on my own internal mind chatter, that internal cognitive, strategic, protecting, controlling, strategizing, story making, nonstop. It was that experience that allowed me to have a different relationship with that, and to know that I am so much more than that. And I need reminding, as Panache says, but I will say that were it not for that, I don't know what kind of ill-advised, precipitous decisions I might have made about life, what kind of belt tightening down to the level of starvation I might have made in order to control what type of suffering, what type of kinds of decisions to get smaller and smaller and smaller and more frightened I might have made out of my logic and my reason. And logic and reason is beautiful, and yet not sufficient to meet the challenges of a world becoming new. And so back to where you began with the piece that you wrote and that you shared, we are facing some enormous challenges, and if we meet them from inside the logic and reason, there will be a set of responses that will be very much limited to a menu that can happen when we are in touch with this other aspect of ourselves, this superseding, living, vibrating, resonating. It's really just I don't even have language for it.
Yeah, inside that small story paradigm, it's a tape loop. We've said this before. It's a closed system. Like, nothing new can get in, because there's always going to be a new enemy. All right, so we controlled and we dominated and we got rid of that enemy. Well, the next enemy appears, and the next enemy. And
it's like a math set. It's like inside the set of even numbers, there is no odd numbers.
Yeah.
So if and vice versa, but inside a set of even and odd numbers, you have an exponentially different universe of mathematics.
Yep.
Inside logic and reason, that was the height of our ability, of our evolutionary cognitive abilities to a point, and now we are on the edge of exploring entirely new dimensions of add-on, and it is an imperative to grow into those and to discover them as our own, because they make the world an exponentially larger place.
And what Panache said is that nothing gets denied or rejected. It all comes along. I mean, every part is okay.
It's not scarier in that. It's not scary in that place. Again, inside of that transmission
it's
arena,
in a bigger consciousness.
It's not scary. I mean, you realize the part of you that is responding in that way is, it's like hearing cans, a string of cans, or being dragged behind your car. You realize it's some old baggage, but it's it's a kite tail.
That's it. I love it. We always arrive at these moments after shows like this. The transmission always kind of wipes us out.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, we need like hammocks back here.
That's right.
We
always need to ask Spence too. How we doing? Oh, 3. I got it. Yeah.
3 minutes and 9 seconds. That's an eternity.
No, it's not. It's
okay.
It's not. So self-acceptance, self-love. It's not a self-control game. It's connecting with our soul source. It's sourcing from our soul and organizing our choices so that we're really in that grace, the space of grace.
Yes.
Where it's okay. Anything can happen. It's all going to fit, and we're taken care of.
To put some closure on where we began with the high anxiety state around war and around Syria, and if I can offer one suggestion, I've discovered something, embryos the most beneficial outcomes. So I don't know these answers, and when I am inside,
MBO.
when I am
Most beneficial
inside
outcomes. I got it.
of the kinds of transmission energies that Panache just shared with us, or Anamika or others, or that occasionally I'm even able to touch into for myself, there is clarity. And when I track back, and it's normal, I don't want to judge myself for it or anyone else, but when we track back to this, this very tightly held logical and reasonable thing, and facts are facts, in there it's a little more confusing. So the highest thing that I can hold there is, since I don't know what is an outcome, what would be a favorable outcome, I can simply hold out for whatever is the most beneficial outcome for all concerned.
That's it.
That is what I'm holding, and I don't have to actually be able to pick and choose what it is specifically. The MBO.
Yeah, and what is up for me is real for me. So
Yes.
so that's where I can own what it's triggered in me, and in a particular way, not feel so responsible. Like, I mean, this is a weird paradox. I am ultimately 100% responsible, but to the degree that I'm trying to fix it outside of myself, it's a losing proposition. I'll never get anywhere. Not at that level of consciousness, but internally, I can move mountains because it's really only my work. And when I show up clean and clear, then I have something constructive to offer in the world. That's the game changer, So look, each one, reach one. It's each person does their work, and as a collective,
experience yourself at some point, and from time to time, as we just did, many of us who listened in on the show experienced inside of that transmission, experienced the connectivity. From there, we have, from there, our choices are empowered choices across the collective. Retreating back, as is normal, nothing to judge, as you say, but retreating back into the habituated response system.
Yeah.
We know ourselves, if we do it all, to be connected only as a theory, not as an experience. And so
that's a great
distinction. There's a disconnect between saying, I know I'm connected, and so I'm going to hold out for an outcome. 20 minutes ago, the resonance I was holding, that was systemic in the field. Right now, the resonance that I'm holding is different. I'm not saying it's better or worse or less. It's just different. So here I am at the I can confidently say that my desire, I can get behind the most beneficial outcome, the MBO.
I love it.
Without having to know.
So the outcome now is that we're going to say goodbye, but we hope that you will come back and join us again. Thanks for listening to Cutting Edge Consciousness.